Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be taking a look at melatonin.
Yeah, melatonin. It's having like a major moment right now.
It really is. It seems like everywhere you turn, people are talking about melatonin for everything, from sleep to even weight loss and maybe PCOS and diabetes.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz out there.
There really is. So to really get to the bottom of it all, we've rounded up 7 in-depth studies to sort of pick apart.
Yes, and these aren't just any studies.
Right.
We really wanted to focus on like the highest quality research we could find. So these are all what we call systematic reviews and meta-analyses.
Yeah.
And that basically means they've taken a whole bunch of individual studies, like randomized controlled trials, which are considered the gold standard.
Right.
And they've analyzed them all together to get a really clear picture of what the evidence actually says.
Yeah, it's like we're looking at the big picture, right?
Exactly.
So all of these studies are published in some pretty reputable journals, too. I mean, we've got the Journal of Ovarian Research, the European Journal of Nutrition, and Clinical Nutrition.
Oh, yeah. So we're talking high impact factor stuff here.
We are. So this is going to be a very comprehensive look at what the science says about melatonin.
Cutting through all that hype.
Exactly.
Separating fact from fiction.
So I think a good place to start is with what probably most people think of when they think of melatonin, which is sleep.
Oh, for sure. Right. I mean,
Right.
that's like melatonin's claim to fame.
Exactly.
Yep.
And for good reason. One of the studies we looked at, effects of exogenous melatonin supplementation on health outcomes. They actually found really strong evidence that melatonin can actually significantly reduce the time it takes to fall asleep.
Like, that's huge.
It is huge, especially for people who, have insomnia or just trouble winding down at night.
Oh, absolutely.
They call this sleep onset latency, by the way,
Oh, there you go.
the time it takes to fall asleep.
You gotta love the scientific jargon.
I know. But yeah, so it can really help with that. However, when it comes to overall sleep quality, like how restful your sleep is,
Yeah.
the research is a little bit less conclusive.
Yeah, it's a little bit more nuanced.
Yes.
There was another review we looked at. It was called Effect of Melatonin Supplementation on Sleep Quality. And basically what they found was that while some studies did suggest that melatonin might improve sleep efficiency.
So that's like the percentage of time you're actually asleep while you're in bed.
Right, exactly. It wasn't quite as strong of an effect.
Not as robust.
Not as robust. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like it can definitely help you get to sleep faster, but whether or not it actually makes your sleep more restful, the jury's still out on that.
More research needed.
Always more research. But let's move beyond sleep because, I mean, that's kind of the obvious one. What about mental health? Specifically depression.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so we found this really fascinating meta-analysis. It was titled Effects of Melatonin Supplementation on BDNF Concentrations in Depression. And it actually showed that melatonin seems to hold some real promise for reducing depressive symptoms.
Interesting. And that was across like different study durations and dosages too, right?
Yeah, they looked at a whole bunch of studies, different lengths, different amounts of melatonin, and pretty consistently it seemed to have a positive effect.
And didn't they find something interesting about melatonin's effectiveness for older adults?
Oh, absolutely. That's what's so cool about this.
Yes.
So in that same meta-analysis, they found that melatonin was actually particularly effective in reducing depression symptoms for people over 65, which, makes you think, right?
It does. Why would it be more effective for older adults?
Yeah. Is it because as we age, our natural melatonin production declines, so maybe supplementation makes a bigger difference? Or could it be something about how our brains change as we get older, like the sensitivity of our receptors?
I don't know, but it definitely raises a lot of questions.
Right. And I think it really highlights the need for more research in this area. It's like maybe melatonin isn't just about sleep.
Right.
Maybe it plays a bigger role in healthy aging overall.
And brain health, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about sleep. We've talked about mental health. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about those claims that you see everywhere about melatonin and weight loss.
Oh, okay. Is there any truth to that?
Is there any issue to that?
I'm ready to debunk some myths.
Well, you might be surprised to hear that there might actually be something to it.
Really?
Yeah. We came across this meta-analysis. It's called Melatonin Supplementation and Anthropometric Indicators of Obesity. And they found that people taking melatonin actually did experience a significant reduction in body weight.
Wow. Okay.
So it's not just all hype. there's actually some emerging science to back it up.
Mhm.
Now, whether or not that's a sustainable long-term solution, that's a whole other question.
Right. And what about other aspects of metabolic health, like blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity, all that good stuff?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Another meta-analysis we looked at, this one was titled Effects of Melatonin Supplementation on Diabetes. And they found that melatonin could potentially, this is a potentially, improve fasting blood glucose levels.
Okay.
Glycated hemoglobin, which is a measure of your long-term blood sugar control, and insulin resistance.
Interesting. So it sounds like melatonin might be a bit of a multitasker,
Yeah.
not just helping with sleep, but potentially influencing a lot of different processes in the body.
Yeah, it really does seem that way. But, as we've been saying, more research, especially long-term research, is definitely needed to really confirm these benefits and to really figure out how it's working.
Right. Like, what are the mechanisms?
Yes.
How is this all happening?
Okay, so far we've talked about sleep, mental health, weight management, and we've even touched on diabetes.
Yeah, hitting all the hot topics.
We are hitting all the hot topics. But now I want to delve into another fascinating area, and that's melatonin's potential role as an antioxidant.
Oh, antioxidants.
All right.
That's interesting. We usually think of colorful fruits and vegetables when we think of antioxidants.
Right, blueberries and all that.
Exactly. But it turns out this hormone that we produce naturally might be a powerful antioxidant in its own right.
Yeah, so we're talking about melatonin potentially helping us fight off those free radicals that can damage our cells.
Exactly, like a little internal shield against oxidative stress.
That is so cool.
Right. I mean, it's like a whole other layer of melatonin's potential. And it gets even more interesting when we start looking at specific conditions where its antioxidant properties might really shine.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Well, one study that really caught my eye looked at the effects of melatonin on women with PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome. It's a hormonal disorder that can lead to a whole bunch of health challenges.
Right, and I know a lot of women struggle with PCOS. It can be really, really difficult to manage. So I'm very curious to hear how melatonin might fit into that picture.
Yeah, so this particular study, it was called Effective Melatonin Supplementation on Cardiometabolic Risk Factors. And they were specifically interested in how melatonin impacted markers of oxidative stress and inflammation in women with PCOS.
Okay.
And what they found was pretty remarkable. Melatonin significantly increased what's called TAC, or total antioxidant capacity, in these women.
So basically, it was boosting their body's overall defenses against free radical damage.
Exactly, like giving their antioxidant systems a serious upgrade.
Wow, that's impressive. But did it have any effect on, like, the other symptoms or issues that are associated with PCOS?
That's a great question. So while they saw these amazing antioxidant effects, melatonin didn't seem to have a clear impact on other cardiometabolic or hormonal factors that are typically associated with PCOS.
Interesting. So promising for fighting oxidative stress and PCOS, but more research needed to see how it affects the bigger picture.
Exactly. But here's another interesting tidbit. Another analysis we looked at, it was titled Melatonin Supplementation and Pro-Inflammatory Mediators. And they found that melatonin actually reduced levels of certain inflammatory markers, things like TNF-alpha and IL-6.
Okay, for those of us who aren't scientists, what do those markers actually tell us?
Good point. They're basically signals that the body is experiencing inflammation. TNF-alpha and IL-6 are involved in a whole cascade of inflammatory responses, and they're often elevated in people with chronic diseases. So the fact that melatonin reduced these markers suggests it might have a role in fighting inflammation beyond just PCOS.
Wow, so it's like melatonin has this potential to be a real multitasker when it comes to our health. It's amazing. And that's not even everything. There were a couple other really intriguing findings that came up in the research.
There always is. Right.
Always. But before we get too carried away with all of the potential benefits, I think it's really important to take a step back and remember that most of the studies we've looked at, they've all involved short-term use of melatonin.
That's a really good point.
So we don't really know a lot about its long-term effects.
Right. And long-term studies are really crucial, especially when it comes to something like a supplement that people might be taking regularly.
Yeah.
We need to know that it's safe and effective over time.
Absolutely. And it's also important to remember that everybody is different. What works for one person might not work for another. People can respond differently to medications and supplements, and melatonin is no exception.
Absolutely. Factors like age, genetics, lifestyle, your overall health, these can all influence how your body processes and utilizes melatonin. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Definitely not. So if someone's thinking about trying melatonin, It's not just a matter of grabbing any bottle off the shelf.
Oh, absolutely not. Talk to your doctor. Talk to a healthcare professional.
Yes, they can really help you figure out, is melatonin right for you?
Right. What's the right dosage for you?
Exactly.
Are there any potential interactions with other medications you're taking or health conditions you might have?
Right. They can really make sure it's safe and potentially beneficial for your unique situation.
And that actually leads perfectly into the next part of our deep dive.
Which is, what does all of this research actually mean for our listeners?
Exactly. Like, how can we take all this scientific knowledge and translate it into something practical and actionable?
Because that's what really matters, right?
Absolutely. It's all about empowering people to make informed decisions about their health.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway from all this research is that melatonin, it's way more than just a sleep aid.
Right.
Like, it's showing up as a potential factor in all these different areas of health.
Yeah.
From sleep quality, of course, to reducing depression symptoms, maybe even helping with weight management,
Yeah.
acting as an antioxidant.
And we even saw some stuff about pain management and fertility.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. It really is.
This one little hormone our bodies make naturally, and it could have all these different uses.
It really speaks to how interconnected our bodies are.
We tend to think of things in isolation, like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping, or, oh, I'm feeling depressed, or, oh, I need to lose weight.
Right, right. Like they're totally separate issues.
But the reality is, all these systems in our bodies, they're talking to each other all the time.
Yeah, they're constantly interacting.
And it seems like melatonin might be playing a role in all of that.
Like a little messenger running back and forth,
Yeah.
keeping everything in sync.
I like that analogy. But of course, as with anything, we have to remember that we need more research.
Oh, absolutely. We've uncovered some really promising findings.
Yes.
But we're still in the early stages.
Right.
We need those long-term studies to really understand the full picture.
Especially when it comes to long-term use and safety.
Exactly. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Right. And also, it's really important to remember that everyone's different.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, people respond differently to medications.
Supplements, foods, everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Melatonin's no different.
What works for one person might not work for another person at all.
Right. Could even have the opposite effect.
And that's why it's so important to talk to a healthcare professional before you start taking anything new.
Especially something like melatonin, which can have such a wide range of effects.
They can help you figure out the right dosage.
Yeah. Are there any potential interactions?
Right. Are there any risks?
Make sure it's actually a good fit for you.
Exactly. Personalized approach is key.
Always.
So we've talked about the science, the potential benefits, the need for more research, the importance of talking to your doctor.
Yeah, all the bases.
We have hit all the bases.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious, from everything that we've talked about, what stood out to you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like what surprised you or what really intrigued you?
Yeah, it is a good question. I mean, we've really dug into the research here.
Well, yeah.
We've uncovered some fascinating things.
Yeah, definitely some surprises along the way.
For sure. And we've talked about, personalized approaches and the importance of ongoing research. All the important stuff.
All the important stuff, but now it's time to bring it all home,
Make it real for the listeners.
Yeah, make it real. So to our listeners out there, we want you to think about this.
Yeah.
Based on everything you've learned today, how could you use this knowledge?
Yeah, think about your own life, your own health goals.
Is melatonin something you would consider trying?
And if so, what for? Maybe you're struggling with sleep.
Yeah, maybe you're tossing and turning for hours.
Or maybe you're just curious about its potential benefits for mental health.
Or weight management.
Or even as an antioxidant.
The possibilities are pretty exciting.
They are. But remember, knowledge is power.
It really is.
Now that you've heard all this research.
You're more equipped to make informed choices about your health.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. We've just scratched the surface here.
There's so much more to learn about melatonin.
Keep digging.
Yeah, don't be afraid to go down those research rabbit holes.
Read those studies we mentioned.
Explore other research.
And most important,
talk to your doctor.
Talk to your doctor before you start taking anything new.
They can give you personalized advice.
And make sure it's safe for you.
So that wraps up our deep dive into melatonin.
I hope you all found it as fascinating as we did.
It's been a real pleasure exploring this with you all.
And we can't wait to bring you more exciting discoveries in our next deep dive.
Until then,
stay curious.
Keep learning.
And as always, thanks for listening.